The Hall of Fame exists to honor the resilience and vision behind our industry's great American success story. This year's inductees, Larry McCaffrey, Mike Smith, and Rick Corman, are all recognized for their business acumen and their role in shaping an industry that has succeeded on ingenuity and persistence. Our first honoree, Larry McCaffrey, will be introduced by Keith Hartwell, who is another industry luminary himself. Keith is the founding partner of Chambers, Conlon, and Hartwell, which is where I started my career for 15 years as the original lobbying team for the Shortline Association. Keith is a mentor of mine, somebody I still quote regularly, somebody who still helps out with various Shortline projects, who does a lot of writing for the Shortline Association. So chances are, if you've complimented me on something I've published anytime in the last 7 years, Keith probably had a hand in it. So I'm honored to have Keith here introduce our first inductee.
It is likely that few people in this room know Larry McCaffrey, but virtually everyone in this room is a beneficiary of the groundbreaking work he did to jumpstart today's shortline industry. His railroad career began in government, appointed in 1973 as a special assistant to the General Counsel of US DOT to help in restructuring the nation's bankrupt railroads, and in 1975 as chief counsel of the Federal Railroad Administration, where his primary focus was implementing new grant and loan programs to help preserve the surviving railroads. In 1977, he left government service to form a Washington, D.C. firm with railroads as his primary practice. More than just legal services, Larry's firm provided one-stop shopping that helped entrepreneurs buy and operate Class I line that was headed for abandonment. His talent was his ability to analyze the real-world economics of a light-density line and use that analysis to secure financing, negotiate realistic transactions with Class I sellers, and navigate the complex regulatory approval process required by the Interstate Commerce Commission. In 1983, Larry and his law partner, Peter Gilbertson, co-authored the book Starting a Short Line, covering everything required to buy and operate a short line, a book that was considered the Bible for short line ownership in those early days. Today's short line was made possible in large measure by two things: the Staggers Act of 1980 and the creation of the 10901 expedited exemption process for government approval of line sales. The deregulation and market flexibility unleashed by Staggers laid the economic foundation for short-line success. Section 10901 of the Staggers Act was a relatively obscure provision intended to facilitate the purchase of non-railroads of a rail line that was otherwise headed for abandonment. It did so by shortening the time for regulatory review from years to weeks, and by giving the Interstate Commerce Commission the option of not imposing the extraordinary expense required by so-called New York Dock labor protection that provided up to 6 years of wages for any impacted employee. Section 10901 was intended to give local governments an easier path to preserve failing rail service, but that is not what happened. The statutory language used the phrase non-railroad, and the McCaffrey firm created the concept of a non-railroad holding company and secured an ICC decision that the holding company, and not its subsidiary railroad, was the applicant and could therefore acquire the line as a non-railroad under the expedited 10901 procedure. Every subsequent line sale approved under that policy was contested in court by rail labor as a regulatory loophole never contemplated by the statute. The many court decisions were a mixed bag, and in the late 1980s, Larry and his law partners helped the Shortline Association launch a significant lobbying effort to enact into law the expedited 10901 process and the elimination of New York Dock labor protection, an effort that was ultimately successful in the 1994 ICC Termination Act, which created the Surface Transportation Board. In the 1930s, Parker Brothers popularized the name Shortline by placing it on the Monopoly Board. In the 1980s, Larry McCaffrey put real short lines on the map by helping clients create new railroads in some 40 states. In 1980, a small number of legacy short lines operated 8,000 miles of track. Today, there are 600 short lines operating 50,000 miles. Larry did not start them all, but he started dozens of the very first ones, and he created the 10901 process virtually every short line today used to successfully start their business. His career-long contribution to the modern short line industry makes him richly deserving of this award, and it is my honor and privilege to welcome him to the podium to accept it.
Very generous in your remarks. You're one of the few people in the room that could explain all that in 3 sentences. When Peter Gilbertson called me last fall to say that I was selected for this award, I was astonished and, of course, deeply flattered. Having been away from this industry for more than 2 decades, I wasn't aware there was a Hall of Fame, let alone be considered for inclusion in it. Who would want a lawyer, particularly a former FRA chief counsel, in their Hall of Fame? I asked Peter if there was some major donation I was expected to pay in connection with this award, which is a common practice in New York, at least. He said, no, not at all. And the award comes with one added benefit, and one only, a free drink. I'm still looking for the free drink, but I'm sure that'll come after this award. My selection for this award is the culmination of my extraordinary good fortune to have had a career in the short line railroad industry. I get asked it once in a while at a short line social event, what did you do for a living? And my response is simply railroads. And the questioner then repeats the word railroads. And they like it was some concept that they couldn't quite grasp. And then asks me, Amtrak? No, my response is not Amtrak, short lines. For most of them, that reference to short lines is meaningless, outside the monopoly board that Keith made reference to. But then I explain how I worked all over the US in some 40 different states for short line freight railroads, serving industries that are vital to those areas: grain, coal, lumber, aggregates, cement, fuel, steel, copper, and many more. And I also got to know very well areas like Northwest Arkansas, Western Montana, Central Minnesota, Southern Maine, among many others. Not only was there endless variety in my work, but also this was a period of enormous change in the industry. Instead of dealing with painfully dull regulatory matters as a lawyer, I was helping create new, very successful railroads, large and small, throughout the country, all of whom became members of this association. In accepting this award, I want to acknowledge the invaluable support and engagement I had throughout my career from many, many people. For example, the president of this association, Howard Croft, who gave the association imprimatur to the book that Keith mentioned, and to Keith and his partner, Ray Chambers, who raised the visibility of the industry immeasurably in Washington, D.C. To my stalwart partners, Peter Gilbertson, Bruce Lieberman, Mark Sidman, and to long-term clients like Bill Brodsky at Montana Rail Inc., Karen Kraska and Ryland McCarran at Arkansas and Missouri, Pete Clausen at Gulf and Ohio, Mort Fuller and Jack Hellman at Genesee and Wyoming. While the foundation of this award may be based on my contribution to a critical regulatory change, as Keith highlighted, to me that change was simply that it opened the door to a career in a dynamic industry with a storied history. I was exceptionally lucky to be in the right place at the right time with terrific people. Thank you for this recognition. I will cherish it always. Appreciate it.